So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today with another session of Artist Talks with Winchester Galleries with Brubey Hu from Waterloo, Ontario. Brubey was born in Xiamen, China, and moved to Canada as a teenager. She recently graduated from the University of Waterloo with her MFA. Prior to completing her graduate studies, she earned a BFA from the Maryland Institute College of Art. In 2018, she completed the Banff Artist in Residence Emerging Visual and Digital Arts program at the Banff Centre for the Arts and Creativity, where she had opportunities for studio practice and creative exploration. Currently, she sits on the board of the Contemporary Art Forum Kitchener and Area, CAFKA. Much of her work explores dualism, translation, feminism, memory, and color theory. This artist talk will be followed by a 20-minute question and answer period. We are thrilled to be displaying a collection of Brubey's vibrant and engaging works at Winchester Galleries, along with Qin Yuan's works until May 12th. And thank you so much for joining today. I would like to invite Brubey to start her talk. So I will turn off my audio and video, and I will come back with the questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Anahita, for your introduction and facilitating my talk today. I will share my screen right now. Just a second. Okay. Can everybody see? Yes?
Yep.
Yes, everything's
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. And hi, everyone. I am Brubey Hu. I am an artist and graphic designer currently living in Waterloo, Ontario. I'd like to thank Winchester Galleries for offering me this exhibition opportunity with Qin Yuan, who's also present today. And this exhibition is called Dynamic Reflections and will run until May 12th. And thanks for coming in on the Saturday today. Thank you. And I will start. This is a gallery view of my work in Winchester's gallery space. I wish I can see this exhibition in person. Unfortunately, I don't feel safe about flying due to COVID. Yeah, and I will talk about the paintings that are in the exhibition and a little bit of my process and some other work and new work I've been working on. So, like Anahita introduced, I was born in Xiamen, China in 1994. My parents and I moved to Vancouver, BC in 2011, and I finished secondary school there. And I then went to the United States for undergraduate studies. And last year I finished my MFA at the University of Waterloo. I work mostly with, but not limited to, painting and artist books, with interests in architecture, dualism, translation, feminism, memory, and color theory. Through subtractive simplification, the paintings are my response to my surroundings rationally and subconsciously. In making abstractions, I explore relations and interactions between colors and shapes with reference and inspiration from architectural spaces that I have experienced, whether it's from where I live or from my memory. They transcend flat images or physical space and objects and document introspective moments. This painting here depicts windows by a swimming pool in South Surrey, BC, back in 2018, when we can still go to public swimming pool safely. Swimming is a very meditative exercise. And when I was in the gym, I couldn't help but notice the light shines through the window and the blinds. I never brought my camera into the pool to take photos, as many people don't feel comfortable about people taking pictures there. So when I was there, I kind of forced myself to remember the structure of the window, as well as the light and shadow casting on the windows. My parents and I moved very frequently during the first 2 years when we just landed in Canada. And I moved once a year when I was in Baltimore for undergrad. And this experience of constant moving made me realize that changing locations, which means changing surroundings and climates, generates a kind of disconnection. This kind of disconnection is produced by people interacting with other people and different cultures and social values. In my work, instead of directly confronting the cultural and social conflicts and differences between East and West, I try to find solutions to reconcile these disagreements and to explain a sense of consensus. So using fundamental and geometric elements that everybody recognizes, such as rectangles, I find commonalities that dodge the conflicts, which sometimes are impossible to resolve. And by composing basic shapes, the paintings appear to be minimalistic. They appear at first to lack a message. When there's not enough information, disconnection occurs, as well as ambiguity. Both notions convey a sense of spaciousness, more blank room for the viewers to insert their reality into the artwork. The ambiguity suggests a kind of consensus. In her essay, Against Interpretation, Susan Sontag recalls the traditional understanding of abstract painting as the attempt to have no content. And since there's no content, there can be no interpretation. I received many comments about my paintings being minimalist or associated with minimalism. I'm not a big fan of this term because art history has given this word a cold feeling. Not to mention it is also overused in design industry. And in my opinion, minimalist abstract works are not indifferent with no content, since they have the ability of opening up more possibilities for each viewer's individual interpretation, whether the shapes remind them of certain memory or colors that bring unique resonations. And the ambiguity also speaks to the fragmentary and dubious qualities of memory. I really enjoyed ambiguity in my work, as once it is out of my hand, I don't have any control over how the viewers perceive it. There's a narrative embedded in the paintings. However, the viewers will never receive the same message because we're all individual entities in the world with distinct life experience. A Chinese artist, Hu Xiamen, she claims in an interview, even if I describe my work to you down to the last detail, you can never ever go through that path from the same entrance to achieve what I did. When we view a painting, we actually see what is active inside of us. This set of painting is about my childhood home. It's not in this exhibition, but I just want to bring it up to show you an example of how I use gray color in my paintings. Many of the colors I use contain gray as part of the ingredients. Gray is made from a combination of black and white, which is often thought of as a pair of binary. But gray lies somewhere in between. In my personal opinion, black and white are not opposed to each other since they are both extreme and defined notions. It's like extremely dark and bright. Gray is their opposite because it's neutral and ambiguous characteristics. Visually, I'm interested in how gray unifies the whole image and the balance between sections that gray brings. Korean artist Lee Yu-fan considers gray as a color with a weak sense of existence, yet is well suited to expressing a vague, ephemeral, and uncertain world. But why painting? I'm often asked with this question. I do a lot of planning on my sketchbook and my computer before I actually start working on a painting surface. In my paintings, I seek perfection in making smooth surfaces, yet I embrace the small unpredictable imperfections. What I mean by unpredictable is that even though I know what kind of general surfaces I will get by utilizing tools such as taping knife and foam roller, or adhere different materials to the painting ground, such as contact paper and printer paper, I cannot foresee exactly what kind of marks will be left on the surface. The marks, as imperfections, are generated by my hand, can never be reproduced identically in another work. Although I am able to create imageries digitally, and my background in graphic design does show up in my paintings in terms of compositions and color palettes, it is it's like something very hard to escape from. Once you learned graphic design theory, you see everything in grids. I still like doing physical paintings. They directly and sincerely reflect my status at a moment of painting without a filter by digital devices. And this is another shot of my paintings in this exhibition. As you can see from that slide, the scale I have been working with in my paintings is relatively small, as I hope to imbue a sense of intimacy between my work and the viewers. The elements become condensed and enriched in small scale. I painted this one during last summer when I started staying at home like everybody else. I was away from my family and fiance. Being alone and having intimate contact with myself and the space I lived in. And I picked the colors sort of randomly. I wanted something contrasting but harmonious. After I finished this painting, I realized this color palette is always there with me. This is a view from my home, looking from inside to outside, just right here, looking outside. And I like how my surroundings subconsciously influence my decision-making. And the lack of explicit information is apparent as there are only fundamental shapes in my paintings. Yet the sentiments and stories are communicated through the inevitable imperfections done by my hand. Excuse me. And I often integrate the properties of light and shadow by combining multiple panels or canvases. The space in between diptychs or triptychs is activated because the colors and shapes extended from the front of the painting to the sides, which creates colored reflections and shadows on the walls. A visual duality is constructed. What exists on the surface are not only the opaque acrylic paints, but also the more breathable reflections in contrast. Integrating multiple panels into one body of painting physically echoes the concept of disconnection and connection. And all the panels are still seen as one unified piece, despite their discrete physicality and different contents, with the illuminating reflections connecting ambiguously in between. I became very interested in fluorescent colors because of its profound ability of light reflection. In most architectural spaces, light and shadow are an important pair that adds a temporal layer of dimension and mood. They have the ability of transcend the physical objects into a sensorial experience. In my work, I often apply thick acrylic paint with taping knife or palette knives to create smooth but unpredictable surfaces in order to mimic the behavior of light and shadow in architectural space because it's changing every day. The reason why I choose to include actual reflections in my work is that no matter how proficient I am at painting, the light and shadow still remains an illusion if I painted them, not the actual presence. Like I said, once my work is out of my hand, I have no control over how the viewers perceive it. Over the years, as people install my diptychs in gallery space or at their home, I noticed many of them install my work not as what I intended, but still works nicely. I feel the panels and the shapes are just like building blocks. like the toy that kids play with. So I want to push this aspect further and I started this series, Building Blocks. No matter which physical orientation or order they display the panel, the shapes work, but suggest different narratives. I enjoy seeing my work displayed differently under distinct settings. And this is this painting in this exhibition. And the back is Chin's work. And this is one of my newest painting that I didn't get to show in this exhibition. It is also another example of building block series. The triangles are at the same location on the wooden panels. The viewers are invited to play with the physical orientation of each panel. Growing up in a patriarchal society, I didn't realize how much discriminating double standard has suppressed female until I left that environment and saw many fellow females still suffering hard finding autonomy. This painting depicts two body sections of which women are often ashamed while men are usually proud, underarm and between legs. This is another gallery view of this exhibition. It's not showing up. Okay, it is here. All right. Next, I want to talk about another series of work I have been working on, the tone paper series. This two here. I started this series when I was doing an artist residency at Banff. I had a hard time integrating organic shapes in my work. The way I think can be too rational or too controlled sometimes. So when I was in the studio, I just started tearing some paper and traced irregular edges. This is like a therapy for me to lose some control in my process. The 4 paintings showing in this exhibition belong to the particular series called A Piece of 7-inch by 7-inch paper torn apart. And as I keep making more of them, I realized this is actually a translation process which I frequently engage with, being bilingual and living in between places. The first action is to tear a piece of 7-inch by 7-inch paper into irregular shapes with torn edges. I then carefully transcribe the shapes onto the painting ground using masking tapes. I apply thick acrylic paint to the surface. These shapes are articulated with variations of white to mimic the color of papers. Here's a video of me tearing of the last side of the shape on the wooden panel. So in this process of translation, subtle textures are created as organic traces by my hand, such as the background showing through or accidental mark left on the wet paint, like this one here. Metaphorically, it is unavoidable to see the organic traces in the process of literal translation as well. There's always something missing, whether it is the original verb and adjective that do not have equivalents in the other language, or the imagery embedded within an idiom loses its ability to convey the same message once translated. A comment I received about this series is that they give viewers a sense of longing. Firstly, I think it's from the torn edges. They suggest the action of tearing, therefore separating. They were once a whole, but now apart. Secondly, I think it's because they are no longer the actual papers, but the gestures and memories of them. The original papers are gone. What's left is the shape depicted on the painting ground. And this series is called Playground, which also belong to the tone paper series. I made them when COVID first started in North America. and I was in desperate need for a bright and uplifting color palette. So I didn't add much gray into it. Just I want to keep how bright they are. They consist of the same group of tone paper, but were arranged differently on each panel. I didn't use any tapes for this series. I wanted to play around the tension between loose and controlled. So I just traced the shapes of the paper down and then very carefully painted individually. It takes way longer time than painting a rectangle. And when I was painting this, I also had a thought. The tone paper in different shapes are almost representing the individuals on the world. We are all in different shapes and gestures and sizes and colors, but we're all just beings, coordinating, working with each other to make the society works. And I'm trying to find a sense of order in chaos. Like I sort of place the composition randomly, but I do put a sense of order into them by being really OCD, having the first one, like the green shape, it has 4 in green, and the second one has 4 in purple, and the third one has 4 in blue, just dividing them equally. And this process of translation is pushed further by my textual practice via my self-authored book of poetry during my MFA studies. This set of book is called Returning, Dreaming, and Talking, and 回语梦呓 in original Chinese. The book consists of a collection of texts exploring the themes of home and identity, a sense of drifting continuously from place to place, and as I enter adulthood, and as a female raised in both China and Canada. I wrote the poems in Chinese, and with an assistant of a translator, Cici Jialu Zheng, converted the text into English, which is the second one here. And then I invited my Chinese friends and family to collaborate on translating these poems a third time from English to Chinese. Although I can do all the translations myself, I'm interested in examining how much information, meaning, and emotion evaporated through the repeated process. Many of my original poems utilize dream as the agency to retrieve memories and connect with my past. However, dreams and memories are personal and untranslatable. The compelling result of the third translation from English to Chinese demonstrates that the literal languages, in this case, become dualistic instruments of precision and ambiguity. On one hand, the precision of translation is delivered by the knowledge of both languages, as well as the combination of words and grammar, which are the essential characteristics of languages. On the other hand, the ambiguity is generated contextually from one line to another, from one paragraph to another, which then facilitates an open-ended conversation between the poetry and the translators. The use of blue grids was inspired by graph paper, a common tool for mathematics and laboratories. In this book, some of the graphs occupy a whole page in the book, while others are divided into sections correlating with the text. Incorporating grids as the underlying rule, I also investigate the rhombus shape as a distortion of the square, which is another nod to translation, to the angled shadow that occur from windows as light streams into the interior space. And to me, it is also an equally subtle way of marking my identity and authorship as a female, as the rhombus shape symbolically referring to the female genitalia. Both of these two notions often suggest logic as well as rationality, and even coldness without any emotions. However, the narrative is built by the way the rhombus shapes coordinate with the grids, as well as transfiguring the content of text into visual geometric forms. The poems are indicated with dates, referring to the format of diary or journal. They record my journey of constant moving and traveling, reflections of my hybrid identity, and retrospections of the past. And beside the paintings and the artist book, I have collected the used tapes, residues from the process of masking out hard edge shapes. I started collecting them because tapes are expensive and I didn't want to throw them away. It's just a bad hoarding habits. And a lot of them are still sitting in my sketchbook. But I realized the reason why I'm so fascinated with them is because the same kind of paint was applied to the both surface when I was doing the painting action, yet the material and the aesthetic outcomes are distinct. The paintings contain rigorous and defined shapes, while the masking tapes have loose and organic gestures. They're two opposite representations of the same action, a duality of my hand that is simultaneously controlling and free. They were born from the same process and coexist with each other. The tapes are also serve as a memory of how the paintings are made. I tried two ways displaying them. One is like the one on the left. I call them drawings. I intentionally arranged them on the blank paper based on their textures and colors. Their original identities as process-based tools are changed. Their meanings are inverted and altered both collectively and individually by the ways they combine with each other and by the specific positions of each one on the paper. And the other one is like on the right. I intended to have the tape installation for my MFA thesis show, which never happened. I want them to resemble the way they were randomly pasted onto the wall for drying, just like in my studio. This is also not to translation from studio space to gallery space. And the element of duality is created by the juxtaposition between the rigid shapes in the paintings and the more free gestures on the tapes. I also included some new paintings here. Recently, I continue to experiment with more fluorescent colors. For this one, the slant shapes, the sun shape, this one, the dark blue one, is extended to the middle part here, but not with the dark blue, which was something I usually did, but with a neon pink. I also want to see how I can create more dynamic gestures by letting go more control to the process. For example, the two shapes here, and also the angled reflection, something that I've been trying to do. I did this by having one side of the panel with longer rectangle and the other is smaller. So there's a kind of like very big angle here. And I'm planning on moving soon. So currently I work mostly in my living room. So a lot of my work are pretty small at this point. But if future studio space allows, I do hope to make some bigger work. I have this painting hung in my living room right there. And I noticed the reflection because I've been with it every day and night. And I noticed how the reflection performs differently during daytime and nighttime with different light settings. And this is one of my newest work, playing with tone paper shapes. I've been wanting to integrate the tone paper shapes for paintings about memory because their fragmentary quality echoes when we think about memory. And this piece depicts my memory of an afternoon, summer 2019, back in my hometown in China. I'm also fascinated with the plexiglass, especially the dark ones, because they make the fluorescent paint pops out even more. And this piece depicts my memory of an evening dining with my friends before COVID, of course, at a Mexican restaurant in Baltimore, Maryland. It's probably the last time I traveled internationally. Yeah, that's it. This is my last slide.
Thanks, Brubey. Very interesting. And thanks for sharing your most recent works.
Thank you.
It's really amazing to see your process from finishing your MFA and then moving forward with new series and exploring more different things. Yeah, fantastic. So we can maybe start the question and answer section. If anybody has any questions, please be comfortable to turn your video or audio on and ask your questions. Or if you like, you can just type your question in the group chat. We can just maybe wait a few minutes for everybody to think about their questions, turn their video or audio on, and
sure.
Yeah. Okay, so if you don't have any questions ready, maybe I can start with my questions. Oh, hi, Chin.
Hi. Hi. Oh, where's Ruby? I don't see her face.
Hi.
Hi, Ruby. Yes, thank you for the talk. I really enjoyed the last painting, Bewildering. And I've noticed how you have introduced more translucency and more looseness, less tape work. And it's probably there's no tape work there. So like the translucent white zinc with the with the dots, I really love the looseness of it. I also love the more geometric and hard lines, but this is quite refreshing. So will you be going towards this direction? Can you sort of explain the departure from the hard edge, or maybe it's not a departure?
To be honest, it's not a departure. I actually did use tape for this one. They look like loose gestures, but I actually take them out like that. I don't know, maybe it's because my graphic design background, I find it very hard to paint loosely. I know a lot of painters, like maybe Chin, you can get really free and intuitive on your canvas, but I just don't work that way. So I kind of force myself to get more kind of looseness in the process by doing drawings of lines, like drawing off the shape to make them look like loose shapes. But the process of applying paint to the surface is not loose at all. Like I very carefully planned where each element is. Like I want them to work together. And then I started.
Yeah, the composition is lovely. Yeah, the balance
Thank
of
you.
the objects. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Great. Hi, Tara. I think you're muted.
Hello. Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk, Ruby. This is really, really great.
Thank you, Tara. Yes, thanks for coming.
No, I mean, there were a lot of engaging and lightning views into your process. I was really taken with the way that you were describing how translation was like really threading through your whole practice, it seems. I wondered, have you ever used a translation between your poetry and your painting in response to the other, like vice versa? Like, are you extrapolating translation to that degree as well?
I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly. Do you mean like combining the textual practice with visual practice together?
Kind of. And in my head, what I was meaning was more, let's say if you made a painting and then use that as inspiration to like translate into poetry? Like basically as influence, one or the other.
I personally kind of see them as two different directions, because there's something that cannot expressed from my mind, cannot expressed with poetry, but can be expressed in visual forms, and vice versa. And another thing is, in my poetry book, I did use a lot of rhombus shape, and I want to continue using them in my paintings as my next step. I haven't started, but I want to. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a really good.
No, I just sorry, pardon me.
Oh, I was just saying that that's a really good question, and it just made me think that the same as you translated the poetry in from Chinese to English and then back to Chinese, can you take a piece of artwork, translate it into the Chinese culture, and then bring it back to the probably Western culture? Have you ever done something like that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Many people didn't realize when they saw the painting, they didn't realize I am a Chinese, and maybe because my paintings look very minimalistic, and which is a part of Western art history. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like it's very hard to escape from that, like because my past art education are done in North America, and before I leave China, I never thought about going into fine art at all. Like I was really busy with schoolwork. I just want to get graduated from high school and get to a good university and get a good job. But that's it. When I was that's my thinking when I was in China. But when I came here, I was like, oh, I can finally do something I want. And the way, like, what you call the Chinese painting, like the traditional style, you know, like landscape or like Chinese ink, that's just not natural to me at all. Like, I don't know how to paint that way. This is a more sincere way for me to paint. And regarding to translation, I feel like that's something that every painter encounter. Like when you do a painting, is it a translation of your mind states? Or is it something you're depicting from real life? Is it still a translation or not? I don't know if that's clear, but yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much to you both.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. So do we have any other questions?
I'm curious, Andrew Marie. Thanks, Brubey, for your talk. I found that very illuminating. I can't turn my camera on.
Sorry, I can maybe. Can you turn it on now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'm curious because so many of your pieces are multiple panel, and obviously they leave your hands one day, like that piece behind you. And I happen to have purchased one of your multiple panel ones. And so are you saying you invite the people who purchase your art to experiment with the arrangement of the canvases? Because I have it fixed in my head that I have to hang forward a certain way, but now I'm wondering if maybe I should just mix it up every once in a while.
For the forward piece, there might not be as much freedom as this one right here. But when I was making the paintings, I do a lot of mathematics, like calculation of which elements goes where. So I don't know why I did that at the beginning, but then I realized when people get my work, they do display it differently. Like for this one in particular, like this was my original intended display method, but then I realized I can play them around like that, and it creates different kinds of narrative. I want to give the viewers that freedom to do that, you know, because just like I said, we're all different and we view paintings differently.
Okay, well, I'm very happy to hear that, because I feel like then maybe I bought 3 or 4 pieces of art at once.
Thank you for buying my work.
My pleasure. Thank you for creating it.
Sounds great. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, it's actually great because when I was curating the show and I was installing the works, I had to wait for a few minutes or maybe go back to the pictures that you sent me and make sure that I'm installing them right. because you can create the flow with different compositions, different way of arrangement the panels together. And I think when you give the viewer that flexibility of choice, the viewer can actually play with the panels and make the arrangement themselves. It makes the artwork more interacting and more engaging. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I do want to subvert that kind of traditional understanding of paintings, because when you see paintings, it's like something very precious on the wall that you don't want to touch them because you know they are something like very valuable. But then I feel like if that's, I don't know, just I want to give them freedom to do that, to play around with the arrangements. Yeah.
Amazing. Louis, I see that you have raised.
Yes, I'll put up my hand. It's just
Louis.
Hi, Ruby. That was wonderful. Really, really enjoyed it. And I'm thinking about like your ground, how it subtly reveals at the very edges that there's an underpainting. So do you start with a darker painting, a darker ground? Even that last one, yeah, there's traces that there is something underneath, and almost all the paintings reveal some sort of thing actually quite near the edges. So you know, it either comes through sanding or your application of the top coat. But yeah, that interests me how that is achieved.
Yeah, because I paint with palette knife or just knife in general, it creates a really thick surface, unlike using brush, because you can get like really thin layers, but with knife it's almost always like really thick. And to be honest, this painting and this one has another painting underneath that I didn't like, so I just covered them. But like maybe I just didn't do a good job with the sanding, or I was thinking maybe having them showing through could be a nice aspect to it. So I sort of left them there, and I like how they are suggesting a kind of different hidden story underneath. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, even in the ones I have, that happens at the edge. And in these ones and Encounter, I think the sense of light that's coming through the transparency that you've achieved is really starting to be interesting too, because usually your surfaces are more, the paint is more opaque, right? And here you have, here it feels to me like glass, you know, two panes of glass that intersect, create a different color. And the next one, it feels like you have like, you know, it's a process of physically dragging. But I really like that kind of shimmering, that kind of sense of it's activated, right, in a different way than the opaque.
Thank you. Yeah, I do want to play more with the translucency, because in the past, a lot of my paintings use very thick and opaque paint, and sometimes when I look at them, I feel like I don't know how to breathe through that. Like they're, like I said, like I'm very interested in how light affects the whole interior environment when you're staying at home. And I feel like I want to integrate that more into the painting service beside the reflections in between panels.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay, if you don't have any more questions, maybe I can ask my last question to wrap up everything. So Brubey, where do you see the future of your work? Do you have a plan? Because you are a planner. It's obvious. You plan for your artwork, you plan for your future. Do you have a plan? Do you want to explore other styles? Maybe you want to take a different approach. What is your plan?
So like I said, like recently I've been experimenting with the plexiglass. It is something that I wasn't so sure about because painters don't use plastic glass that much, and I don't know if the paint is gonna stay on the surface forever, but I just really fascinated with its like glass, like very transparent and glossy kind of surface. That's something I want to try more. So I bought more plastic glass recently, and I will do that. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't paint more with wooden panels. I still think it has very interesting thing I can work with especially with the reflections. And in terms of future paintings, I am doing more paintings now that I answered that. Is that I want to try using different shapes. I'm hoping to, I recently bought a jigsaw, so I'm hoping to cut the wood panels into different shapes instead of just, rectangles. I've been working with like so much rectangular shapes, and I wonder if I can change it up a little bit more. And that's that. And another aspect is the feminism aspect, as I mentioned in my translation books, the set of books, the rhombus shape. I don't know, I'm just fascinated with that shape. I feel like there are a lot of potential to play with, and making it more about feminism, because in art history, I saw like Georgia O'Keeffe or Judy Chicago, they painted the female genitalia, but using a lot of like soft lines. But like, why does soft line represent females? Why can't straight lines represent females, right? So I want to subvert that kind of thinking and using rhombus shape and straight lines and see where that takes me.
Very interesting. Yeah. Well, I wish you luck in your professional career as an artist.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank Brubey for taking the time to prepare this beautiful presentation for us and to explain her process of art making.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you. The exhibition Dynamic Reflections will be on display until May 12th. And as you know, this exhibition is a curated collection of works by Xiamen and Brubey Hu. The gallery is open from Tuesday to Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you live in Victoria, please drop by to see the exhibition in person. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Goodbye, Brubey.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.